Hello, family, friends, and fans. I'm Fletcher Roden, and this is Fletch Me Anything. Today on Fletch Me Anything, we're looking back on an album, True Democracy by Steel Pulse, 1982. Well, you may not know who they are or what that is. You may not know who I am or what this is. It's Fletch Me Anything. It's a show I did a couple years ago on this very YouTube channel that ran 5 days a week. And I went on for between 15 and 30 minutes and talked about just about anything I want to talk about. It's one of the reasons I called it Fletch Me Anything. Another is that I was and remain Fletch. Fletcher Roden, if you don't know me. I'm a writer mostly. I got a ton of books available under my name and others. They're available in paperback and for Kindle and in audiobook format. I'm a recording artist with lots of music. You can download all over the internet. Wherever you like to download your favorite music, you can download mine. I had a 4 record set in January called Quadrilogy, and I've got a new album slated for January of 2025. And I can't give you the title, but it'll be available from Spotify or Amazon Prime or iTunes or Deezer or wherever you download your favorite music. Anyway, you can learn more about me at my website, FletcherRoden.com. That's where you'll find a link to my authors page at Amazon, my Spotify artist page. There's free music at the website, things you can't get anywhere else, and links to this show, my other show, Quotes and Quips, with Fletcher Roden, which is currently running this year right here on this YouTube channel. It's every Monday at noon. I had a show last year called Tracking the Lone Wolf. You can find that. And by the way, you can find reruns of Fletch Me Anything from its original run still up on this YouTube channel. This is not, by the way, a reprisal of the show, just a quick 1 week revisiting of the format. But enjoy while it lasts because anything is in short supply. Okay, so today we're looking back. Now, I used to look back on my favorite movies and my favorite records and TV shows sometimes and things like that. Back when I was doing FMA, as we all like to call it, all three of us. Anyway, they were some of my best liked webisodes, to be honest. And I was glad to be able to share these things with people. I mean, a lot of people didn't know a lot of the music that I grew up with because they're younger than I am. Most people are, it turns out. And it was my pleasure to sort of spread the word about those things. Now, one of them was an album called Earth Crisis by the reggae band Steel Pulse. It was one of my favorite bands in high school. Turns out it came out in like January of 1984. So I must have got it right when it came out because I felt like I was listening to that for most of high school, but clearly not. Um, so that's a great record. I did a looking back on it, and one of my family, friends, and fans, Echo Trip, checked it out and liked it, and I guess got turned on maybe to another Steel Pulse album, which he lobbed back at me and asked me to do a looking back on. So this is the album that precedes Earth Crisis, which was 1984. This is 1982. It's an album called True Democracy. Just as a now, sometimes I did do looking back by request albums that I'd never heard. I did one on the album by America called America. It was their debut album, and I'd never even heard it before I did the review, but I listened to it a few times and found it to be pretty good. This album, True Democracy, I had in high school. Here's how this went. I bought Earth Crisis just because I'd been listening to Third World, You've Got the Power. So sort of into the and to Bob Marley and the Wailers live. So that led me to be looking in the reggae section, and I liked the cover of Earth Crisis. It had Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and it was a sort of a collage of different topical icons of the early '80s, and it reminded me a bit, I think, of some of these punk rock album covers I'd seen, maybe with Margaret Thatcher and all that. So I bought it and loved it and made a tape for a friend of mine, Ken, at the time, and he liked it and he came back to me with a tape of True Democracy. So I listened to that too. And I'm going to do a looking back, but for this looking back, I want to talk about the one album in relation to the other. Because I remember when I was in high school, I'd loved Earth Crisis, but True Democracy never really hit me where I lived. But having gone back to it now, and given it a listen or two or three or four, I've found that I remembered a lot of it, and I have a different impression. Or actually, my impression is sort of consistent in one way, and it's been changed in another. So let's get to it. First of all, we'll break down True Democracy song by song, and then I'll get to my point. True Democracy, as I say, was made in 1982, was released in that year, and so it's got all the hallmarks of early 80s reggae. It's clean, it's polished, it's recorded, I believe, in England. Uh, Steel Pulse is an English band, I believe, and they're it just sounds really nice. It doesn't have that brackish tone that the 70s reggae albums had that were recorded in Jamaica. And it's, it's got the great singing. Steel Pulse is a great band, tremendous drum playing. I think there are two drummers. I'm not sure, drummer and percussionist maybe. Maybe it's all just one guy, but there's mighty great drumming in it. There'd have to be for it to be a good reggae band, though. But everyone else is great too. The bass, the electric guitar player, good soloist, tasty. The synths are there as they were apt to be in the early 80s. Synths were popular then, and reggae did well with synths. In the 70s, you'd hear a lot of Hammond B3 organ, like in the Wailers, and some maybe electric piano and stuff. But there was not the synclavier back then in the 70s. So they used what they had, and they used a lot of organ, I think, because it was out of their church experience. But mostly it was about guitars and drums. The reggae rhythm is mostly guitar plus drums equals rhythm, and the bass is in there, of course. But it's really a rhythm section heavy type music, and so it's not as heavy on the keyboards in any case. It's apt to be in there, but it's not. It doesn't rely on it heavily. And True Democracy does not rely heavily on its synthesizers, but they're there. And it all meshes well, and it's good, and this is a very solid reggae album. Perhaps greater than the sum of its parts, I think. Let's take a look, and we'll get into it. Okay, so album starts off very strong, very song. Starts off with a very strong song called Chant a Psalm. This might have been a single. Certainly, it's very upbeat, it's catchy, it's got a good strong hook. Some of these songs, unlike the songs on Earth Crisis, and I'll get to it, they're not quite as hook strong. The hooks are there, they're good, but they're not quite as strong. But they're good. Chant a Psalm is a good strong hook, good lively song. I like that one. Ravers, the hook isn't as strong. The title doesn't stick in your head as much as Chant a Psalm does, but it's still good. Plenty to enjoy there. Nothing wrong with it. Find It Quick. I like that song very much. Good. A lot of these songs are they're either religious or they're sociologically sort of elevated. So there's a bit of a preachiness sometimes here. And even the album cover features one guy reading from a book that's not a Bible. It's not a hymn book, but it's a big book with black binding and what looks like it might be leather binding. And maybe it's meant to evoke the Bible, but I've never seen a Bible that was that big and that thin. And I think the other band members are like listening as the one guy reads. So it's got kind of a preachy intent to it. And Find It Quick doesn't have that as much. Find It Quick is about more or less like finding good love and happiness and all the Rasta joy stuff. That's a good song. It's a good strong hook. I think it should have been called Find It Somewhere. That's I think the use of the hook somewhere sticks in my head more than find it, or find it somewhere would have been better, or just find it. But find it quick as the title, especially since it's got an ellipses and then quick with an exclamation point. All that punctuation really draws my eye to that title, and I expect it to be prominent in the song. And the hook kind of gets lost a little bit, considering how it's punctuated. Or maybe it's just the wrong title. Maybe find it somewhere with no exclamation point and no ellipses. You know what I mean? These things do have a psychological effect, but the song itself is quite good. A Who Responsible is good. Here the album starts to reveal itself a little bit more as a traditional reggae album. It's highly politicized. It's it's edgy. It's not so much into pleasing the ear as it is challenging the mind and taunting the conscience. So it gets a little preachy, A Who Responsible, and it reveals that the album really is a serious minded record, and maybe a little too serious for some ears. I'll get to that. Good song though, but not one of my favorites. Worth His Weight in Gold, I think, is a single from the album. It was very memorable. I remembered it. That's the one song I remembered most from my high school experience with this album, was that song, Worth His Weight in Gold. Even though those words, Worth His Weight in Gold, get lost in the song entirely. But it's got a hook, round and round the red, gold, and green, black, gold, and green, which are the Jamaican colors, the colors of the Jamaican flag. And it's a good song. It's got a strong rhythmic, got a strong melodious hook, good chorus, good verses. Now, the thing about reggae is reggae wasn't reggae like reggae has a kinship with funk music, and it's and disco music too. Those three musics have a kind of relationship with one another in so much as they're all centered on the rhythm. You know, you don't in a James Brown song, you don't get a bridge. They're, they don't do bridges really in funk, because a bridge is meant to give an alternative musical presentation to the song. A bridge breaks a song up. It goes from the major to the minor, to the relative minor, let's say. It goes from one steady 4/4 maybe into a 6/4 or to a half time, or from a slow into a double time, and then the bridge is meant to offer an alternative to the rest of the song. And in a funk song or a disco song or a reggae song, or later a dance song, like a house music, kind of a dub song, which I'll talk about, it's not about variety. You don't want alternatives. You want the one beat. You want to dance. You don't want that tempo to change. You don't want you never find, for example, a modulation in a funk song. Not really, because it makes the thing sound like it's going faster. A modulation, which is where you change from one key to another key, it sort of gives it a uplifting, fast moving thing, but you don't want to change the tempo in a dance song. You don't really want to drive it up. I think it would work, but you just don't hear it. Just like you don't hear bridges in a James Brown song. He just didn't do them. It was about that groove. Sometimes you'd get a break, pop, 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 and then it was about the groove. And reggae, traditionally, as political as it is, and disco had deliberately mindless lyrics that were meant to be about dancing. Funk music has lyrics that are meant to be about having sex and dancing and having sex. Reggae had politics on its mind, always did, but it still musically considers itself a kind of a dance music. It's definitely rhythmically centered, like funk is. So you don't get a lot of musical adornment you don't get a lot of musical variation because the groove, it's all about holding that groove. Now, if you listen to a Bob Marley and the Wailers album, what you're likely to get a song like, you'll get a riff, and then it goes right into the groove. They do a riff, and then the groove, and then the riff at the end, and that's your song. And the groove has verse, chorus, verse, chorus. So it's riff. No Woman, No Cry, I believe, has this. Dun, 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 dun. That's Dem Bellyful. It's one, not No Woman, No Cry. Dem Bellyful. So you get a lick. You get your chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus song, and then you get your lick, and you're out. And a lot of these songs on True Democracy have that approach. So I'd say it's more traditional, more of a traditional reggae album. It's in 1982, and the reason I keep mentioning the title, the dates, is that it's 2 years before Earth Crisis. So what you can hear, a lot of the ideas, there are ideas here musically that they extrapolate on in Earth Crisis. So in True Democracy, while you have a more traditional reggae album, you can hear the leanings toward more pop influences. But True Democracy does not go into those influences as much as the next record does. So let's get back to this, though. Worth His Weight in Gold has a little bit more of the pop, but really you're looking at standard reggae, traditional classic reggae song structure. That's the point I want to get across. So with songs like Lego Beast, which is funny-ish, not really. There's not a great amount of humor in this record. There's a little bit, but not a lot. That's a good song, but it's very traditional. And by this time in the album, track number 6, you've heard that reggae groove a lot. And now it starts to get a little bit much. Blues Dance Raid is a good song, interesting, very upbeat, just a song about dancing, not a politics song. So that's nice to hear, and it's good. Blues Dance Raid. I'm not sure about that title, but I think Reggae Blues Dance is what the song wants to be called. But it's a very fun song anyway. Your House, very strong song. That's good, strong songwriting. I want to live in your house, your house. That's a perfect way to express a very complex sentiment. Songwriters over the years, over the decades, over the ages, have been struggling to get this point across. I love you. How do I love you? I love you so much, baby. I want to love your body. I want to fall in love with your body. I want to watch the stars. There's so many musical approaches, here, there, and everywhere. Yesterday, you used to love me. Now you don't. All the complexities of love are, as broad as they are deep. But I want to live in your house. That says it about as pithily and as effectively as anything I can think of, to be honest. If I walked up to someone and said, "I want to live in your house," I'd either get lucky or I'd get arrested or I'd get beaten up. Probably the latter two, with my luck, but look at me. Anyway, and then we go on to Man No Sober, which is, Man No Sober has some humor in it. The gypsy, he tipsy, he drink too much whiskey. There's some lively rhymes in that. But it is also, it might as well be a song about prohibition. It's a little heavy-handed. I would have liked the song to go into drugs, frankly. I would get a verse about drinking. That's sensible. But then, you know what? What about this was 1982, so crack was crack was around. At least it was here. Maybe it was not in England yet. I I don't really know what the crack scene was like in 1982. Uh, there was heroin, there was cocaine, there was meth, amphetamine, crystal meth. Don't tell me there weren't drugs in England. The Sex Pistols, come on, heroin was all over England. You grew up in England in the 70s. You might want to be on heroin. A lot of them were. The 60s too. If you're gonna do a sobriety song, I almost feel like it's a little unfair to be knocking on John Barleycorn's door all the time. Just saying. They didn't mention any pot in that song. Not surprised, but I don't object either. All right, then it ends with Dub Marcus Say. Now this is a dub song. And listening to it, you can tell that it's, first of all, musically it's based on Worth His Weight in Gold, on that thing. Da 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 da, and it's like a dance version of that song where there's lots of breaks and little synth noodling and a vocal, vocal patch, which maybe echoes, delay, like there's a delay on it. Cow, 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 yow, yow, yow. And it's dance music. It sounds with a drum beat under it to play at a dance club. So it's like a dance mix. But it's not of any of the songs, unless you consider it a dance mix of Worth His Weight in Gold, but it's not called that. So I don't know, Dub Marcus Say, I guess it was something for the dance clubs, for sure. And it's an anticlimactic way to end the record, because not only is it a re, it's regurgitated material, but I mean I don't mind that. I guess I understand bringing back a, a motif, a musical motif at the end of something. Billy Joel did it pretty effectively on Nylon Curtain, where at the end of the last song, "Where's the Orchestra?" they play the musical line from Allentown, which is the song that opens the record. And it works nicely in the context of that song, and it ties the album together. I get it, you know, Sergeant Pepper, blah 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 blah. I get it, but it's not a super strong way to. Those songs don't end. I mean, Where's the Orchestra ends that album, then Alan Curtin, but it's a song of its own, and it just does that little musical thing at the end to tie it together. The last song on the record isn't an orchestral version of Allentown. That would have been lame. And the last song on Sergeant Pepper is very famously not the Sergeant Pepper reprise, it's A Day in the Life, which is a big song to end a big record on. This record ends a little bit with a whimper. I mean, I was hoping that it was an extra, it was a bonus track, because here on the online version, there's Lego Beast, the 12-inch version of Ravers, 12-inch a dub version of Your House. So it was the early 80s. So a lot of people were doing that. It's fine, but not a super strong way to end the record, I would say. Now, let's take the thing on a whole. On a whole, you got a lot of strong songs here. This is a very solid reggae album. It really is. But it is, in fact, I think, it shows you where the band is going. And they released it in '82. My guess is they probably toured after the record for about a year, and then they spent a year working on Earth Crisis, and then in 1983 roughly, and then it came out in 1984. So you can see where they progressed from True Democracy, it's a hard one to say, to Earth Crisis. There are musical themes in True Democracy which they bring out again in Earth Crisis. Earth Crisis is a much poppier album. I think it's a good thing to look at these two as sister records. One of them is a traditional reggae album, but I'm not looking thinking about it. Steel Earth Crisis feels more of a pop album. That's it's like reggae pop. There here in True Democracy, you see the pop influences are leaking in. In Earth Crisis, they've taken hold. So I can see how a real reggae fan might say, no, True Democracy is the great record, and Earth Crisis is the pop album. That's not even a reggae album. If you were a true hardcore reggae guy, I could see how you'd have that perspective. Or reggae gal, or reggae whoever you are. If you're a reggae fan, I could see where you'd say, well, this is a reggae album. Earth Crisis is hardly a reggae album at all. Now, I don't really, I think of it as a reggae album, but it is much poppier. Now, I think the songwriting is stronger on Earth Crisis. I think Tightrope is stronger. I think Earth Crisis. I think Wild Goose Chase is a stronger closer. It's I think track for track, it's more memorable. They do lift a few musical ideas from True Democracy, but I think they're developing them. They don't seem they're a band that doesn't seem to mind doing that, harvesting their own music, which is fine. John Fogerty did it exclusively, and a lot of other artists do. The Beach Boys, the Beatles, certainly harvest their own music all the time. So I don't mind any of that. I do find that Earth Crisis is more instantly pleasing. But it also it sounds like it was made to be, and I can get where a lot of people, a lot of reggae files really prefer the edginess of True Democracy as a whole. Song for song, I think Earth Crisis is stronger, but the production quality, I think they're about the same. The arrangements on Earth Crisis are more sophisticated. The arrangements on True Democracy are more deliberately basic. And it's not that they decided to keep it basic in contrast to Earth Crisis. They hadn't done that record yet. But here they're going for the reggae ethos, which is stick to the groove. You know, the groove is number one. But in Earth Crisis, I think the song becomes number one, and the groove actually becomes a close second, which is rare in reggae. Even with great songs like a lot of the Bob Marley. I keep going back to Bob Marley, but you kind of have to. A lot of his songs, Redemption Song, it's not a reggae song at all. Not really. He just strums it on a guitar. It could have been written by Neil Young in the 70s or the 90s, and no one would have called it a reggae anything. So that song's not about the groove. It's about the purity of the performance and the resilience of the song itself and the spirit of it. It's a great song. Buffalo Soldiers is a reggae song in the traditional sense. And if you like reggae, then maybe you prefer the traditional. And maybe all the pop that's in Earth Crisis is too much for you. When I was in high school, I hate to say this, hate to cop to myself this way, but when I was in high school, I was still a Beatle fan. I'd been a Beatle fan when I was a kid. So in high school, I wasn't listening to them all the time, but it was still in my head. And when I heard these two albums, I remember thinking True Democracy is a little bit like one of those early John Lennon albums. Plastic Ono Band, or Sometime in New York City, maybe, where the musicality took a back seat to the lyrical expression. It's not expressionism, but to the intimacy of the lyrics, let's say, to the personal expressiveness of the lyrics. Sometime in New York City is all politics, but that's what was on John Lennon's mind at the time. So he was being as personal about that as it was about anything, presumably. John Lennon is well known for saying something like, songwriting just in order to write a song, all you need is 3 chords and the truth, something like that. Three chords and the truth. And True Democracy kind of has that ethos. Uh, Earth Crisis to me sounds more like a McCartney solo album. It sounds more like Ram from 1971, the follow-up to McCartney, or the famous '73 album Band on the Run. You know, it's got qualities of those records, which pretty different than, Band on the Run is a different kind of album than Sometime in New York City, even if they were made within a few years of each other by two guys who grew up down the street from one another and in whatever. So I remember thinking that then, and as I look back on these albums now, I kind of think a little bit. If you don't know Steel Pulse, you don't know True Democracy, and you don't know Earth Crisis, just think, well, one of them's a little more like John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, and the other one is a little bit more like Ram. And it kind of holds up. It holds together. But a lot of people will tell you, I'd rather hear John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band. I don't want all the poppy vocal harmonies and all the cushy jazz chord inversions and extensions. Give me three chords and the truth. And that really, reggae has always been that kind of music. It's always been musically simple. It only got fancier thanks to things like Earth Crisis, but it was meant to be groove music, not musical sophistication. It was never born of the same ethos that Steely Dan was. It was born much more of an ethos comparable to something like James Brown, just in terms of the groove. The groove is the spine. The groove is groove music. So people could dance their way out of their misery. Is a lot of what groove music is. Even disco was, so that largely white people could dance the way out of the mundane lives which they led from Monday to Friday. And funk was, was largely about finding some joy in a world that was increasingly perilous and deadly in many cases. Sometimes music was that. Music was as much a weapon. It was a weapon often, but as much a release. I wanted to say as much a release as a weapon, as much an escape. Disco is certainly an escape from, of all things, the power shortage of the 1970s. So, anyway, there you have it. True Democracy, 1982. Steel Pulse, a very solid, strong reggae album by just about any measure. A lot of strong songs there. Good record. Different from Steel Pulse's Earth Crisis, which is also good. Two sides of the same coin, maybe, you'd think. I think maybe True Democracy tells us where reggae has been up until that point, and 1982, and Earth Crisis in 1984 sort of sets the stage for where reggae is going, which generally followed a more commercial path, I believe, from that time forward. So they're both good records, good band. Thank you very much, Echo Trip, for recommending that I do this looking back. I always did enjoy them because a lot of times I learned as much as I taught. Really, sometimes I think they're teaching me. Okay, so enjoy that. You can find other looking back webisodes from the original run of Fletch Me Anything on this website. They're on the Fletch Me Anything playlist, where you'll find this very video and the other ones from this week. So you can look at all those and check out Quotes and Quips with Fletcher Roden. That's my current show. And Tracking the Lone Wolf, that was last year's show. And Tracking the Lone Wolf is on a different channel, though. It's a YouTube channel with my name on it, but it's not this YouTube channel. I don't know how that happened. I thought I was calling the other channel Tracking the Lone Wolf, but I must have goofed. But if you search it, you can subscribe to it, and that'll make those easier to find. It's like 12 episodes. You should subscribe to this channel too, because that'll make old Fletch Me Anythings easier to find. It'll make new shows that I do. I've got a lot of videos coming up in the next few years. I went through my archives and preloaded them into YouTube. So, like for example, in August, I've got Right Makes Might, Stronger Structure and Storytelling, which is my half-hour long seminar on story structure. Um, so that'll be available on my YouTube channel. Check that out. Check it all out. Enjoy it. Also, I've got a brand new book, Dr. Mom and Other Works of Short Fiction. It's a new mom-com novella, mom-com novel, I should say. I'm not going to redo this just for that. It's a novel, but there's also a novella in it, and a novelette, and a 10-minute stage play. They're all brand new to you. So read that. It's paperback and Kindle. Enjoy it. There's a link below. Thanks for watching. Tune in again. I'll see you then, or you'll see me. I won't see you because the tech ain't there yet. Aren't you glad? So tune in again, and until then, bye, Mary.